the main weapon of the Romans. 2,000 years ago, the Roman army was the most well-equipped in the world, with architects mastering the art of using stone and concrete, and military engineers constructing structures with metal and wood. The main weapon of the Roman infantry was the fearsome gladius, a double-edged blade about 18 inches long with a sharp tip, designed for stabbing and piercing rather than slashing. But if a sword could be deadly up close, then so could their spear, the pam, to kill from a distance. It could be thrown with deadly accuracy from about 100 feet away. The Prime Minister's design is basically designed to kill. Evolution of armor. It is designed to pierce people, to pierce armor, to pierce their shields. This axe has a 2-foot-long iron handle on the top of a 6-foot-long wooden pole. The tip of the spear blade was triangular, and once it was stuck in the enemy's body, it was difficult to remove. The disadvantage of any spear-like weapon is that the enemy could pick it up and throw it back. But Roman military scientists used cutting-edge metalworking technology to protect their soldiers. The iron tip of the opium was strengthened by rapid heating and cooling, making it hard and strong. To create technology to protect their soldiers, the iron sheet of the puma was hardened by rapid heating and cooling. The pole is soft because it is uneven. When it hits the shield, its strong tip pierces, but the soft pole bends. This made it impossible for the enemy to turn it back on the Romans. Protecting your troops is as important as arming them for attack. Modernity. Early Roman soldiers wear chainmail called lora hamata, vertical rows of solid washer-like rings made from bronze or iron are connected with horizontally moving riveted rings. It also has some drawbacks. It is quite heavy, weighing about 33 pounds, and any enemy arrow can penetrate the gaps between the rings and injure the wearer. Weapon reconstruction expert Ben G. studied the impact of Roman weapons, causing them to literally explode through the joints and make their own way. Roman armor makers were much more. Lora segmentata, a type of plate armor made of multiple interlocking iron plates joined together by leather straps, is as flexible as chainmail, but 1/3 as. The protective shoulder and body pads worn by football players work in much the same way. The lightly padded shoulder and chest pads allow for movement, while also diffusing the impact of heavy blows. The lura segmentata was designed to withstand enemy arrows, but the arrow only penetrated so far. The arrow may have taken a toll, but the armor protected its wearer from serious injury. And if the Roman weaponry had a touch of modernity, so did their tactics. A thoughtful warrior. The roads they built still exist. They created laws that still guide us today. But on the battlefield, the Romans were a completely different force. They were not only warriors, but also thinkers, and skilled in military tactics. And sometimes their tactics were so ruthless, so unexpected, that they not only won the battle, but also crushed the morale of their enemies. This army was built on discipline, fear, and perfect strategy, an unstoppable machine that fought not only hard, but also smartly. Their enemies didn't even notice, and when they did, there were already many. Turtle strategy. A line of soldiers slowly advancing. Their shields are locked together so tightly that not even an arrow can penetrate them. Shields in front, shields on top, shields on the sides. From a distance, it looked like a living tank made of metal and muscle. It was no ordinary structure. It was a moving wall, a roof, and a shell all at once. But why was it so terrifying? Because it was almost impossible to stop it. The archers would rain arrows, but they couldn't penetrate anything. Triple axis. In 315 BC, Rome stopped fighting like a mindless mob and created a strategic nightmare called the triple axis. It wasn't just a defense system. It was a living mechanical meat grinder built to outlast anyone else on a bloody battlefield. The Romans didn't use a solid. The Romans did not use solid walls. They used quinquins, which were an unevenly arranged chessboard-like arrangement of independent units. Behind them stood the princeps, in the prime of their youth, and at the very back sat the triarii, the burned-out veteran warriors who literally knelt down, watching the chaos with eerie calm until it was time to finish the job. Experience level. In most ancient wars, the victor was the prime minister, in the prime of youth, who stood in the back and did not collapse from fatigue at the beginning. Herein lies the trick. As the front-line warriors reached their final stretch, the air filled with the sound of the commander's flute. As if by magic, the warriors did not break. Herein lies the trick. As the front-line warriors reached their final stretch, the sound of a commander's flute filled the air. As if by magic, the hastati did not break. They melted through the predetermined 30-foot gap. Before the enemies could catch their breath, they saw a new group of restful and silent attackers advancing towards them. Untiring war. By 197 BC, this shift had completely shattered the powerful Macedonian army at Cynocephaline. It was so reliable that it became a Roman proverb for the last resort for the triarii. It meant that the children's work was done, and the warlike leaders had finally arrived to put an end to the dispute. Alesia, 52 BC. Julius Caesar looks up at the hilltop fortress of Alesia, knowing that a direct attack would be suicidal. Most generals would have been content with a simple siege, but Caesar's 50,000 soldiers embarked on an engineering project that transcended military logic. Trier's last hope. To trap the Gallic king Vercingetorix inside, they dug a 10-mile-long trench and built a massive wooden wall called the rampart. But then, the nightmare descended. 250,000 Gauls were chasing Caesar, screaming for his destruction. He was the meat in a deadly sandwich. Instead of retreating, Caesar ordered his troops to turn around and build a second, opposite outer wall, 13 miles long. For weeks after weeks, the Roman army lived and fought inside a narrow, double-walled, donut-shaped fortress, which was blocked from both inside and outside at the same time. Siege of Alesia. The Romans spread lilies on the ground to repel the large number of Gallic soldiers. They secretly dug holes with sharp poles and used provocative objects, such as driving iron nails into their feet in the dark. It was a perfect example of extreme desperation. The Roman army never collapsed, even in the face of overwhelming odds of 5-1. Trapped between two wooden circles, it felt as if they were fighting two battles at the same time. Military strategy. When the foreign army finally dispersed against the Roman fortress, Vercingetorix rode off, threw his sword at Caesar's feet, and proclaimed the independence of Gaul. Pilum and Gladius. A Roman soldier was not a hero. He was a swift and skilled assassin. His lethal power came from a cool and calculated combination of two specific weapons. First came the pilum, a heavy 4.5-pound spear with a long, narrow iron handle. The pilum and the gladius. A Roman soldier was not a hero. He was a swift, skilled assassin. The source of his deadly power was a cold and deliberate combination of two specific weapons. The first was the pilum, a heavy 4.5-pound spear with a long, slender iron shaft. The reason for all this was that Caesar refused to stop the excavations and decided to trap himself along with his enemy. It was impossible, but it was done. When a Roman did this, he was not just aiming for the heart. Secret trap. The soft iron was made in such a way that it would bend immediately upon impact, making it impossible to throw it back. If that spear had pierced an enemy's shield, the unnecessary weight of its curved shaft would have pulled the edge of the shield downward. The Roman infantry forced the enemy to abandon their only defenses at the very moment of the attack. As the gap narrowed, the Romans brought out the gladius hispaniensis, where tribal enemies used heavy broadswords that took up a lot of space to strike. The Romans used a 20-inch long blade designed for precise thrusting. Special spear. There was no chance of striking in the suffocating, shoulder-to-shoulder crowd of real combat. The Roman man would peek through the gap behind his huge shield and stab the knife from below into the stomach or groin with lightning speed. As his opponent raised a heavy sword to strike a fatal blow, he bled to death from a stab wound he could not have imagined. It took less than 3 seconds for a trained soldier to defeat an opponent twice his size. Short sword. This was not a duel. It was a planned process of clearing the battlefield, where brutal efficiency was more important than personal glory. They want to fight you. They want to crush you like a piece of meat. Rome didn't win with muscle power alone. They won with terrible weapons. Whereas most ancient armies relied solely on archers, Roman legions combined their mobile ranks with a sophisticated artillery force. They won with the help of fearsome weapons. Where most ancient armies relied solely on archers, the Roman legions combined a sophisticated artillery force with their mobile ranks. Training as a skilled assassin. Build 2 walls to fight a war? That's what Caesar did, and in doing so, he broke the last strong resistance of Gaul. Some states often used elephants in war. The Romans were not among them, but they had excellent tactics in fighting elephants. Tactics that turned fear into strategy. War elephants were fearsome. They were fast, huge, and at first glance, unstoppable. They were difficult to kill because of their thick skin, and because of their strength, they could crush both humans and horses. Advanced artillery. In the Pyrrhic Wars and the Punic Wars, Roman soldiers saw them up close and nearly collapsed under their power, and once they learned how to fight elephants, they were no longer invincible. The first step: don't fight them head-on. Instead of attacking from the front, Roman soldiers targeted their enemies' feet and eyes. These were weak points that were difficult to defend. Spears, arrows, and flank attacks became their weapons. The soldiers would wait for the right moment, then strike quickly and move away. Then they made a gap in their herd. They made a narrow path to prevent the elephants from breaking through the dense herd. Strategy against elephants. When the animals attacked, they went straight through without destroying the entire army. And once they were behind the main defenses, confused and defenseless, the Romans attacked from all sides. They also used the fear of elephants against them. Forces. When their ammunition ran out, the velites would disappear through pre-planned gaps in the formation of heavy infantry, as if they had never been there. This flexibility allowed the Romans to test the enemy's strength without risking their main force of 4,800 men. By the time the heavy forces finally entered the battle, the enemy was often disorganized and disoriented by these fur-clad shadows. These were the frenzied and rapid beginnings of industrial-scale massacres, which proved that even the poorest Roman could be a deadly weapon of chaos on the battlefield. Artful genocide. If these ancient tactics sound as amazing to you as they do to us, be sure to click the like button and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of military history. Which Roman trick do you find the strangest? Let us know